said earlier, this is my favorite movie right now.
Sure.
It's a great movie, and it will be one that I revisit for many years to come.
Sure.
And why I chose this movie is because it's rich. It has a lot of things, interesting things to talk about. It has great characters. That to me is what drives a film. Rich character building, and somebody that really is a director's actor. I don't really know how to word that, but a filmmaker who really puts actors first. And this filmmaker has gone on record by saying nothing comes besides the actor. Wait, nothing comes. The actor comes first. There we go. And this film is Boogie Nights, 1997 Paul Thomas Anderson film. It's a film that did get praise. I haven't really looked and seen how much it got Oscar-wise or Golden Globes-wise, since the Golden Globes just aired. But the story is pretty damn simple, okay? It's pretty cut and dry. It's the story of a man's adventures in the California pornography industry in the late 70s and early 1980s. And the director I was talking about earlier was Paul Thomas Anderson, who spoke about how funny he thought pornography was and how interesting he thought the whole culture was. And how this film got started was there's a Rolling Stone article that about John Holmes. This movie's basically based on John Holmes. He's a guy who, has the biggest penis out on the block. He has the best looking face. He's ripped. He's got it all. He's got the charisma. He's the it guy. Everybody wants to be him. Women want him. Men want to be him. And that's where he based the character Dirk Diggler off of. And what I think is so great about these two films that we've been discussing, and this is something I didn't realize until I was watching Hackers. Both of these films that we are watching is about people putting on a front, creating their own character, creating their own moniker, so to speak. What's Johnny Lee Miller's character's original name? Dade.
Yeah. So Zero Cool and then Crash Override are the two aliases he goes by.
Yeah, absolutely. And then Eddie Adams is who Mark Wahlberg plays. He picks the name Dirk Diggler for whatever reason. It's a great name, but this is a film that I think that it really kind of hit a tipping point in terms of like the 90s indie film directors. It was produced by New Line, and you can remember back when New Line, to me, was king of all movies.
Dude, I still, when I see that New Line intro, it just doesn't just warm your heart?
It does. It warms my heart. Let's go through them. Ninja Turtles, Blade, Friday, Boogie Nights. I mean, it's endless. Unfortunately, now New Line is defunct, but they really helped out these 90s independent filmmakers, or as they're called, the video store generation, because they just, they went into video stores just like people went into record stores and just consumed all these films. And basically, Boogie Nights, it borrows from a lot of filmmakers. Robert Altman. It's kind of based upon like this film that Robert Altman did in the 1970s called Nashville. A bunch of different storylines kind of brought into one. Not in a way where they all intersect necessarily, but they all encompass this world that the movie's trying to convey to the audience. And or Goodfellas even. That things were borrowed from Goodfellas from this movie. And what's great is it wasn't like necessarily a ripoff. It was more like an homage to this. And if you'll notice in Paul Thomas Anderson's cinematography, which is typically done by Robert Elswit, I believe he's done it for all of his films, the camera's always moving. There's always something new to look at. There's always a new angle. There's always something exciting. Everything that you see in the film, and you'll hear my DVD commentaries talk about this, every object, every coffee cup, every blanket, every couch cushion is put there strategically. And I think that adds so much to this film, especially when you're doing a period piece like this. Also, every time that I go back and watch this movie, I never know how to feel about it. It makes me uncomfortable. Maybe it's because, like I said earlier, it's about the adult entertainment industry. And I'm not fully comfortable discussing that or my thoughts on that in public, but it's a seedy film. It makes me feel dirty every time I watch it. And for that, it makes me feel so uncomfortable. But I always go back to it, hoping I can discover something more, something new, a new theme. And it's just full of life and music and just culture. It's just brimming with it. And I I just am so drawn to it. I love films like this. It just everything about it is just amazing. And also, let's point out the fact that Paul Thomas Anderson was 27 years old.
That's exactly what I was going to say. This is not Ernest Goes to Camp.
Right.
This is an intricate movie. I cannot imagine being 27 years old and helming and then successfully, like, I can't imagine the person who can pull this movie off at 27 years old.
Yeah, it's crazy. And what's awesome about it, and you'll hear him talk about it, and this isn't just going to be a Paul Thomas Anderson where we just gloat and, just gush over him for a little while, but he was encouraged to do so. His father was in the entertainment industry. His name is Ernie Anderson. He was like a big time announcer for like ABC or something like that, and / comedian. But I want to talk about Mark Wahlberg a little bit in this movie. This was before Mark Wahlberg was Mark Wahlberg. He had already been Marky Mark.
Well, do you think he got this role because he looked good in his boxers, in his Calvins?
No, I mean that has to do with it. But Mark Wahlberg in this movie has an innocence to his face. There's something about his face that is so childlike and innocent that he doesn't really know what he's getting himself into, so to speak.
I agree. I think he pulls that off very well.
And I think that it was just innate. I don't think that he had to necessarily pull it off. I think that he just had to. He was just acting, like he was just doing his thing.
Well, I kind of wondered, is he acting or is he just genuinely, because this is one of his first movies, okay?
Right.
Is he acting or is this just really him? Did PTA put him in there because he knew it was just a good fit, right?
Right.
One of my theories about why Keanu Reeves is not very good in most movies, but he's great in The Matrix, is because they probably just convinced him he was actually going into The Matrix.
Okay.
Keanu Reeves probably really thought he really was learning Kung Fu, and that's why he's much better in that movie. I don't know.
Yeah.
But here, Marky Mark is acting. And here's how I know, because his movie before this was Fear. Do you remember Fear?
I love Fear.
Dude,
Absolutely.
I love that movie so much. And he did a great job playing a totally opposite character. Mm-hmm. So yeah, it's all talent.
It is all talent. And this is a movie that also has some of the best character actors ever to be on film. And I think the best character actor ever of all time is in this film, and that's Philip Seymour Hoffman in it. And he was a staple for Paul Thomas Anderson. He also just kind of conveyed this just innocence and this naivety to the world he was in. Like they didn't really realize, even though they were this surrogate family, they didn't really realize how manipulative they were being by Burt Reynolds' character Jack Horner, or the guy, what was his name? The guy who was over Burt Reynolds, who got busted for the Colonel for kiddie porn.
Well, but see, here's my question, and this is because that's one of the notes I took, was star power, right?
Right.
So a couple things here. All these people were not stars back then. I mean, at least to that level that they are, right? How did he know to cast this perfect blend of people?
I think he just has an eye for it. And I listened to a little bit of the commentary behind it. Initially, Leonardo DiCaprio was going to be cast in the Eddie Adams / Dirk Diggler role.
Interesting.
But he went on to do Titanic instead. And but that's okay, because he saw both of these guys from The Basketball Diaries, which came out a couple years before, which was a very stark movie that really had to deal with a lot of the same issues in terms of like drug use and whatnot that Boogie Nights plays upon. But what I like the most, I think, about this film is the fact that the surrogate family issue, or the surrogate family theme.
Well, I agree, but you touched on them being manipulated, and so right. I noticed everybody in this movie is dumb. They really are, save for who? Burt Reynolds, right?
Burt Reynolds.
The Colonel. I mean, is that it? Is everybody else just being manipulated?
I think so. I think they just kind of get caught up, and you see, for example, and this just kind of becomes another web of characters, and luckily they're really easily recognizable because they're all incredibly famous names now. Even Julianne Moore's character, she's a smart woman who got caught up, and that was her own fault. I think she's the only one in the movie who knew that was what was really going on, and the fact that they were being manipulated for all this, and they're just going to be thrown out like yesterday's garbage. Like that's what happens.
But they weren't.
They weren't.
So it's like these guys are manipulating them, but they're also taking care of them.
Mm-hmm. They are taking care of them, and it's just funny that if you look back, like everything starts from that first interaction that Eddie Adams has with Jack Horner at the titular club, Boogie Nights. He walks up to him and he says, he's like, hey, man, you know, and they're talking, and Mark Wahlberg automatically thinks that he knows that people are out to use him. He says, you want me to jerk off in front of you? He says, no. He's like, no, I can do it. He's like, you got $10, I'll do it. And he's like, no. Because rumor is, and it proves to be true at the end of the movie, that Dirk Diggler has an incredibly large penis.
Right.
And that's an iconic scene at the end of the movie.
Yeah.
But the movie starts, or their relationship starts, with Mark Wahlberg already being suspect to the manipulation at hand.
Oh, okay.
But he doesn't really wise up to it, or maybe he was just kidding himself. And it I don't know, man. It's got a lot of layers to it, and that's just kind of how that's one reading of it. The next time I watch it may have a different reading on it, but
so a couple things I picked up on. One of those was I liked some of the, I don't know, you tell me what the technical film term for this is. Foreshadowing. Yeah, foreshadowing for sure on this first one. So, you know, one thing I liked was one of the initial scenes when Mark Wahlberg's character is with his girlfriend, and he tells her, he says, I'm going to be a big star. Did you hear the plane descending in the background?
No.
He says, I'm going to be a big star, and you hear, and I'm just like, oh, there we go.
That's incredible. Is that the scene where he's staying in his whitey-tighties jumping on the bed?
Yeah. As a 17-year-old boy would do after he just got done banging somebody.
Yeah, how old is he supposed to be, 17?
17. Yeah.
17. And, like, oh, man, he's so incredible in this movie. And I think we really haven't even talked about the comedy in the movie. Like,
no, and I thought John C. Reilly was a good fit for comedy and drama.
Absolutely.
I think his drama gets way underplayed. You know, he teamed up with Farrell, and it's a good fit, but he's such a great, really good actor, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. He's very versatile in his roles, and the dynamic that Wahlberg and Riley form in this movie, it's classic. Okay, we see now a lot of, like, quote-unquote hipster culture that are really ironic towards things like, you know, thick 70s mustaches, or, you know, just the Urban Outfitters. You go into Urban Outfitters, you see a lot of that. But this movie wasn't necessarily doing it for irony. It did it out of homage and respect. You see that they form these movies where they start playing these movies where they're a buddy cop team.
Right.
And they're actually trying to make it like a real movie.
Yeah.
So you'll see a little title card. They'll have the fake intro that they showed in the film. And it was, okay, check this out. This meta humor here that they did. It was Mark Wahlberg as Eddie Adams, who's playing Dirk Diggler as Brock Landers.
Yeah, and Chess Rockwell.
Yeah, and Chess Rockwell. Like, when they think of those names, it's great. Like, the way that John C. Reilly's timidness when he goes up to Burt Reynolds, and he's like, I was just kind of thinking, they're in that RV. I was just kind of thinking, we could, make these movies. He's like, he's like, you got a name? He's like, I got a name. And just Chest Rockwell, like, oh my God, that is gold.
Yeah.
It's gold. And they're riding this high on all these things. And then you remember the scene, when they try to get they go record that track, you got the touch.
Yeah, they're in the music studio.
Yeah, and they can't get the money. So that leads to the most iconic scene, I think, in the entire film. And as you can see, we're kind of going through this film a little linearly, and this is about three-fourths of the way through the film, is when Thomas Jane, who doesn't really say anything in the movie, John C. Reilly, Mark Wahlberg, they go to Alfred Molina's house, who's playing that kind of kooky, effeminate drug dealer guy, and he's wearing the robe. This
scene is almost like Quentin Tarantino-ish. It's just so kind of out there, right?
Right. It is out there. It's cocaine-fueled, man. The movie, this scene to me is the most cocaine-fueled part of the film, because obviously they're buying cocaine, but it just seems like you're on another level. You've been taken through this world. You've been run through the gamut. You've seen somebody we haven't even talked about, William H. Macy, blow his head off.
Oh, man, that's beautiful.
Did the most beautiful murder-suicide in all of film. And now we're at this house, and what Night Ranger Sister Christian's playing in the background. You got Alfred Molina snorting coke, acting like a crazy person.
And this is rock bottom. This is rock bottom.
Rock bottom. All Dirk Diggler has left is this his Camaro, his Camaro, his Stingray Camaro, and they're just going to score, and it's a beautiful scene, and it really honestly could probably be its own standalone short film. And the whole time you have all these different variables going around, much like we talked about being kind of like a Robert Altman film. That you can pay attention to what's going on in the background, or you could pay attention to what's going on in the foreground. And going on in the background is a little Asian man throwing firecrackers. What is he, roller skating?
As all Asians do.
Yeah, and I just find that it's so like macabre and odd and jolting and just, I mean, this word just keeps coming up when I think of this movie. It's so rich, and I just don't really know how to understand. I remember not really knowing how to understand the scene and whatnot. But what made it for me is it has a beginning, middle, and an end, and it is really like a Quentin Tarantino scene, much like as we saw in a lot of Quentin's later work. For some reason, the opening scene for Inglourious Basterds comes to mind, and you know, they're completely two different types of scenes, but it is a scene with a beginning, middle, and an end, and it has a purpose, and it has a motive, and it just conveyed so much about this film. And
well,
I don't know
what I like about this last scene. A couple things, but I think you touched on something when you talk about maybe it's hard to comprehend, but I think that's what makes this a beautiful scene, and I think this is what makes the actors great, and this is what makes Paul Thomas Anderson great. You don't have to understand the scene to appreciate it. You can appreciate this on multiple levels. You can just be some bro who thinks this is badass. This is some you know, we're gonna go rip off this drug dealer.
Right.
And it's fun there, but there's also so much going on underneath, so you can really dig in deeper, and you can appreciate it there. I mean, it's a great scene because it works for everybody.
Right, it does. It absolutely does.
And it pretty much it's the climax to just how low can you go in this movie. I mean, this is nothing new as far as, you know, drugs ruined everything, and this is the downfall of everyone. That's what this movie is. And other movies try to do this, and I think some do better than others. This is definitely up there in my book as far as those types of movies. But this, you know, Paul Thomas Anderson did not have to give any of these characters a happy ending, and a lot of directors would not have done that. A lot of these writers would not have given them a happy ending, but he chose to do that. They all came back together, and they were family in the end, and everybody kind of found their way. And I think the music score in that last scene where it's just kind of showing everybody find their place finally, I think it's great. And it goes into pretty much my favorite line in the movie, which is Burt Reynolds is walking through and just kind of checking up on everybody, and you see Don Cheadle's character, which we haven't even talked about him. I want to get back to him.
Okay.
We see Don Cheadle. His whole thing is he's into stereos in this movie. And he's telling Burt Reynolds, he's saying, hey, man, if you want the stereo to kick, you know, if you want this to be loud, you got to get this upgrade, man. You got to get this upgrade. And, you know, we're panning through, and we see a picture of William H. Macy, their old friend who's dead. And everything's just mellow now, and the family's back. And, you know, what Burt Reynolds says to him is something to the effect of, I don't want it loud. I just want it mellow. You know, what he's saying is, he's saying, look, I've been through so much hell, and this, you know, we've just caused so much crap for each other. I don't want it loud. I just want to be family and live a nice, quiet life, and just, you know, this is just too much trouble. I mean, that's what that scene said to me.
Yeah, man. I haven't even thought about it that way. That I was kind of just caught up in what you're saying. That's so precise. That's such a precise piece of dialogue that really sums up the whole movie. And really what you see, and this is a callback to the beginning of the movie, what you see from Dirk Diggler's character at the beginning of the film is all he wants is to be loved. He wants to know and feel love. And that is really heartbreaking. I mean, it really is truly beautiful and heartbreaking. And, you know, some people, they just, family, the whole point of the movie is family isn't really just limited to who lives in the house with you. And I think that's what the movie is just trying to say. And to use that and to use the adult entertainment industry as a background for that is incredibly bold. And that's something that you just don't see. And to highlight that and to do it in a way with, you know, I guess class, it is classy, but it's so unclassy It is classy. I don't know how that really makes sense because it's really oxymoronic, but it just does it in a way that's so confident and so, man, I just love this film. Like,
many movies try to copy this format, and most of them fail. Let's talk about Don Cheadle's character and his arc a little bit, because I'm not quite sure about this arc, but this goes back. We talked a little bit earlier about how both of these movies are about finding, using aliases. But I think both of these movies are also about kind of like Hackers isn't about finding yourself. They know who they are. Boogie Nights is definitely about finding yourself as well. So Don Cheadle, his character is constantly trying to find his look. Okay.
Right.
In the beginning of the movie, he's going with the cowboy look. And everybody's telling him that looks old, it's not working. And then you see him about halfway through the movie, and he's going for like the Rick James look in like 1980. Yeah. But there's a scene in between that where Don Cheadle's working his day job at a stereo shop. And he knows all about stereos, and he's, or at least he's pretending to. And that's his thing. And it's kind of like Don Cheadle he doesn't realize that he knows who he is. Okay? Even if who he is just a guy who likes stereos. Okay? He's like, who am I? What's my look? He's asking people, like, who am I? But that's who he is. And then also his character, during the course of the movie, meets his girlfriend, and I think they get married, and they have a baby. And what you see in there in the end is who he is a father.
Ooh.
Yeah. The whole movie, they're showing you who he is, but he doesn't realize it. And it's just, the last scene with Don Cheadle is he's going to get donuts for his pregnant wife.
Oh, yeah.
And that's another very Tarantino-esque scene, I would say. It winds up, the place gets robbed, everybody gets shot but him. And then there's that bag of money sitting right there. And that's, let me backtrack. I screwed this up. He goes to the bank to try to get a loan to start his own stereo shop. Okay, so it's kind of like he has kind of found who he is, and this is what he wants to do. And then the bank says, you cannot have the loan because you're a porn star. So the bank is telling him that he can't be who he wants to be. I kind of got some of that in there. Yeah,
absolutely. And I think, go ahead.
Well, my question to you is, so what is the whole, like, money at the end? Like, what is that saying? Is it saying this is... I don't know. I couldn't figure out that last scene. I definitely saw how he was trying to find himself. He couldn't just see right in front of him who he was. I mean, what does the money signify there in the end? Because that's the money that he does take.
Right.
Because these are not good people. No. And he does start his own stereo shop, and he's happy. He has his family, and Don Cheadle is, Buck Swope is his name, and he is who he winds up being there in the end. But, like, how does the money play into that? Like, what are the gods saying to him?
Well, to me, I just think it kind of is my way of, or Paul Thomas Anderson's way of saying, you can be who you want to be, and things are attainable, and it may not always be the way that you want it to happen. I don't know how I would feel about if I just stumbled on a bag of money. I mean, there's a lot to say about that, and the movies do this a lot. And I think in terms of this film, I think that was just kind of saying, you may not always know what kind of path you're going to take, but this time, these are the breaks you get, and you got to kind of take it if you have a chance to do something, take it, and you can be who you want to be. I mean, for all intents and purposes, the guy paid his dues. Like, he came up through the ranks. I mean, you see at the beginning of the film when he's dressed as the cowboy, he's a terrible stereo salesman. His boss comes up to him and says, "What's up with this cowboy crap we're doing here?"
Right.
And through the whole movie, it's kind of like that process. And you see, like, whenever he's being held up, he's broken down. At this point, he is at his lowest low.
Well, kind of, but see, that's the thing. He thinks he is, but he doesn't realize that who he is a family man, because him and his wife, they get along great. He's fixed to be a father, and you can just tell that that's him, and he's going to be great at it. But he doesn't realize it, even right then.
Wow, I mean, yeah, I think it I guess the movie is really just all about people who are trying to find themselves. I mean, you see it throughout the entire movie. You see that same kind of parallel with Julianne Moore's character, Maggie, or Amber Waves, I think is her adult film title name. She just wants to be a mother, and a good mother.
Right.
But she doesn't know how to be. She is a good mother. She is. But she doesn't see herself as a good mother, so that holds her back. And a lot of Paul Thomas Anderson films really focus on inept parents and relationships between kids and parents. A lot of them do, and they're all in each film. You'll notice is one of them has something different to say about it. And I think that this film is about people who don't think that they are, good enough. They don't think they're good enough for the real world, and so that's why they go off and they say, "Well, this is my way. I'm going to be a star." They just don't think they're good enough. They're not loved enough. And
right.
and that is going on out there in this world every day. People who don't think that they are good enough. And man, it's getting kind of making me kind of sad thinking about it this way. and this is why this movie is so great. And it just really it really shows that a lot. And and we can just I'm looking at the cast list right here. We can go down the list and implement that. And there with Philip Seymour Hoffman. He doesn't think he's good enough to be with Dirk. He's gay and he's in love with Dirk. And ultimately Dirk rejects him because Dirk isn't gay.
Right.
But he does not think he's good enough to I don't know what his aspirations are other than wanting to get with Dirk, but I know he's just the boom mic holder. He's not good enough. He doesn't think he's good enough to do this. William H. Macy doesn't think he's good enough to Little Bill to be with his wife who's constantly cheating on him in front of a dozen people on a driveway. She's having sex with another guy. Heather Graham, she's not good enough to get her GED done. Roller Girl. I mean, it's just, man, it really is kind of interesting to think about it that way because I didn't even realize this, and all that kind of translated through Buck Swope with Don Cheadle.
So the last classic scene in this movie.
Right. We got to talk about it.
Obviously, there's a 14-inch dong in there.
Yeah.
But here's what I took away from that. So it's kind of resetting. The last scene is basically Mark Wahlberg's character. Everybody has forgiven, and now they're going to get back to doing what they do, which is making pornos. And he's in the dressing room, and he's going over his lines. And you can tell he's just as nervous this time as he was his first time because it's kind of calling back to his first scene there.
Yeah.
The difference is he's a really good actor in this one, in those lines. Did you hear how good his lines were? Pornos, they have crappy acting, and even their best movies. They were so proud of these because these were real films. And they were so horrible, and it's funny. But what does it say about Mark Wahlberg's character there in the very, very end? When he's sitting there, he's just as nervous, but now he can act great because he really did good on those lines. But he's also going to go bang somebody.
Right.
Like what does that mean?
I mean, do you think that if, let's just say that these films really existed, do you think that we would see signs of him being a good actor on any level?
Well, as males, we would not, because, hey, we're only there to watch pornos for one reason, and it's not the acting.
Right. But I don't know, man. I think that it just kind of says that, everybody, it's just kind of crazy. It kind of shows you that life really is all about these ups and downs and these waves. And really this character, Dirk, is just kind of, he kind of knows at this point that this is the life that he's chosen. He knows it's going to have its ups and downs, and he's right now, he's just taking it as it comes, and I think he's broken down and beaten down a little bit. So I think that's why he whips out his dong and shows it to the world. And that is an infamous scene, and it says a lot. I think there's a lot of analysis in there, but I think on a surface level, it is just kind of him coming to terms with, this is who I am. This is the guy that I've chosen to be, and this is my biggest asset, so I'm going to whip it out, and I'm going to make myself feel good before I go out there, and I'm going to crush these lines. I'm going to crush this woman. I'm going to have sex with this woman,
right.
And I'm going to do it in front of everybody, and I'm going to be, the 17-year-old Dirk that everybody knows and loves, and it's really sad. It's really sad. It's like a Raging Bull kind of moment, kind of at the end, whenever he's standing in front of the mirror and he's looking at himself, and Robert De Niro, Jake LaMotta is overweight and he's been through the ringer, and he, this is what I am now, and he's like some crappy nightclub,
he's like
lounge act.
Yeah.
it's really funny to think about these disparate people who are so enamored with themselves and so hung up on their own image and whatnot, and that scene, man, it's one that is definitely cemented itself in film history, and I think that this film has definitely done that.
I see all of these characters like they're done bottoming out, but I see them all just having pretty moderate drug problems the rest of their life, but they're all kind of friends, and then they they kind of die early, but they'll be okay. Yeah,
I think so too, and I don't know, man. I think that we've seen a lot from these people, and we spent a lot of time with them over the 2.5 hours of the movie. And I think that this is one of the few movies that is able to fully have each one of these main characters fully realized, even in a way that a film like that of the same ilk and from the same era, and that's Pulp Fiction, which is obviously, one of the most lauded movies of the past 20, 30 years. And I think even this movie, brings the characters to a really more satisfying conclusion in a lot of ways, and it's a difficult thing to do.
So what are some other movies that are movies about drugs got in the way and this is our downfall that succeeded, and what are some other movies that are like that and have failed? So I'll
go. Yeah, start us off.
Well, so obviously Goodfellas succeeded.
Right.
Okay. I have a problem with all of these biopics about music stars. Ray and Walk the Line, to me, were the same boring movie.
Yep.
And there's a couple things there. There's a couple reasons we do this. Obviously, there's going to be Oscar cred there. You pick an actor who has something to prove. He's going to imitate this classic icon already. That's going to give him a Best Actor nod. Also, it's an excuse to play their music in the movie. But to me, they're so boring because there's not really a story there. There's not much of a story with either of those two examples. To me, maybe I need to watch these again. I was just pretty much bored. This movie is a drug movie, and and Goodfellas is, but it has a great story to it, and that's why it's interesting to see drugs bring them down and watch the fall and hopefully the rise.
Right.
I think Wolf of Wall Street is okay, but it pales in comparison when you look at it like movies like Goodfellas.
Right.
I think this is better than Wolf of Wall Street.
Boogie Nights?
Yes.
Yeah, I think so too. And I was really riding high on Wolf of Wall Street last year, and I still love it. I've watched it on Netflix since it came on. But as a fully fleshed out film, this film is more complete than that because it plays with satire as well as being earnest in what it's trying to convey. But I felt Wolf of Wall Street, it didn't really have the same character development as Boogie Nights, and it also was satirical the whole way through.
Right. Yeah, and maybe we'll work on a list and talk about it next episode of some more movies of this ilk. I can't think of any off the top of my head, but
well, I have a couple right here. I was going to kind of
what do you got?
So you have Blow.
Okay, and I remember liking that, but it's been a while. It's been a
while, but Blow's okay. Like, it's good, it's solid, but it's just okay. Like it doesn't stand the test. I mean, it was a good movie for 2001, and I've enjoyed it a few times afterwards. But comparison, I think that I have the gist of Blow. Like, unless I just want to revisit the character of George Young, I don't really see any need to see it. It's not a movie that I feel, where I'm going to notice something new or, whatever. But it's a solid movie. Sure. You have Requiem for a Dream. That is a film I will keep revisiting because no matter how difficult it is to watch, it's certainly a force to be reckoned with.
Sure.
Trainspotting. It's crazy because these films are all from, roughly the same era as Boogie Nights.
Danny Boyle, one of my favorite directors.
Yep. This is all I'm going to say about this movie because I don't even really feel like this film is too worthy of the first episode of our podcast, and that's Scarface. Moving on. I just wanted to say that because I didn't want somebody to say, well, you didn't talk about Scarface. And I'm like, well, okay, I really despise that movie. Moving on. Basketball Diaries, American Gangster. Also a film that you and I watched. This kind of a callback to the times that we spent on watching a lot of films. Do you remember The Salton Sea with Val Kilmer?
Dude, The Salton Sea needs a rewatch, but man, what a great movie in my opinion.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Vincent D'Onofrio as Pooh Bear.
Yeah, man.
Ooh, I have not seen that movie probably since 2006, but it is marvelous that character name just still sticks out to me.
Dude, you can't hang with Val Kilmer in his prime. And then Peter Sarsgaard.
Oh, yeah.
Beautiful movie. I'm going to rewatch The Salton Sea.
Do you still have that on DVD?
Oh, for sure.
Oh, tight. Because that's how I saw it with your DVD copy. I haven't seen it since.
Yeah, man.
But, man, I don't know. I can't really think of any others off the top of my head right now. But there are tons. Drugs is definitely a very fascinating topic. to discuss, and I'd really honestly like to kind of have an entire episode kind of dedicated to that, because a lot of films have different perspectives. Drug use is a subjective experience lately, and it's something I really love, films using that as the device in a different way to talk about it. I mean, you even just look at films like Pineapple Express compared to Requiem for a Dream, how different those movies are.
Yeah, I never thought about that.
Yeah, I mean, it's just completely different. It can be either hilarious or literally some of the most... I think Requiem for a Dream is one of the most terrifying films I've ever seen in my entire life.
It for sure is, and they should show it in every like junior high class. Everyone should watch that, you know?
Watch that and watch Kids.
Yeah.
Watch those two movies, and I guarantee you, your kid will be straight on into, wearing ties and being straight-laced forever. I mean... So, anyway, yeah, man, I'm really enjoying thinking about that film, and we're not going to have films every time on this that are going to be as rich as Boogie Nights, and obviously that took up the majority of our film conversation today. But I think that we've talked about two films that really have a lot more in common than we once realized, and I think that's a great takeaway. Yeah,
for sure. And the last little nod I want to throw out for Boogie Nights is Luis Guzman. Luis Guzman. Dude.
Yes. Yes.
I love that man so. And this goes back to perfect casting.
Right.
I mean... but I think that Paul Thomas Anderson is man, it just kind of makes common sense to me. Of course you would pick the best actors. That's, if nothing else, that's less work for you, right?
Absolutely. Yeah, really, when you think about it, he doesn't have to worry about what's going on. He can just worry about his beautiful cinematography and his beautiful image placement.
Right, man. I like it.